Hi, welcome to BoxoPROJECTS. For those of you, very few that I may or may not have met, my name is Bernard Liebov, Director, and this is Amy Bouye, our Programs Coordinator. Welcome today to this open studio for Jacob Love. Jacob's here from London. He's a fantastic accomplished photographer, videographer, doing conceptual work, and an educator as well. So we've got a talk for us that I'm sure will give you insight. I think some of you have not been into the studio yet, so afterwards please go in. You can see the work. It's an installation. There are some 3D glasses. There's some little tin hats if you're scared of the internet. And, that's what they're for. But you're welcome to wear them. And then there are images outside that are all AI generated. I won't get ahead of the talk. I should begin though by acknowledging that we are on the unceded lands of the Kauai, the Chimawebe, and the Serrano, and we thank them for that to the best that we can. So welcome. Please grab, we'll also top up some drinks and everything afterwards, so please feel free to grab a drink and a snack. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Jacob.
Hello everyone. I will start by kind of describing some of the ideas that I had before I came, and then talk about like how that developed and what I ended up making. So the main sort of concept or idea that I had that I wanted to look at when I was coming here is this thing which happens in nature. It's kind of a biological term which is called supernormal stimulus. And so this is like a stimulus, something that's sensorily felt by animals, that is naturally occurring, but is a more intense version of that thing. So the classic example that is often used in textbooks and to explain the situation is that some birds will have like turquoise speckled eggs, and if scientists put in a sort of fluorescent turquoise bigger egg that has more speckles on it, then that bird will look after the supernormal egg more than its own egg. Okay, so there's this element of trickery or deception to supernormal stimulus as well. And so scientists can do it, but it also happens in the natural world. So there's an orchid that looks like a wasp, and so it looks like a female wasp. So the male wasp will come and think that it's mating with the female wasp, but actually it's what's the word?
Pollinating?
Pollinating, that's the word.
Right.
The orchid. So there's this kind of element of trickery or being undercover about it. So it's a sense of refinement, concentration, abstraction, and exaggeration. Okay, so it's not just creating another egg. It's like working out, well, what is it about the egg or the whatever it is in nature that the animal is responding to, and you don't need to actually make. Another example is the beaks on certain birds. You don't even have to have the shape of a beak. It's the red dot on the beak which the thing is reacting to. So it can be our responses as animals to certain things, the things that motivate us or give us pleasure, are actually quite abstract and quite condensed. Makes sense, and they can be. We will react stronger to something even if it's artificial, and it may give us bad effects. So the classic examples for humans that are often used is junk food and pornography. So they're both things that are, pleasurable in a certain way, can become addictive, and are kind of heightened, super normal versions of something which is naturally occurring. But I'm kind of interested, I teach in media, and I work with photography and video, and I teach a lot of young people who are absolutely addicted to screens, like the whole time, as I am, but it's like there's something very strong in culture that there is an addiction to screens, and I'm interested in what that is, and I think that there is a way of looking at media social media, and also like screens, things. Mainly, I think moving image, but also still images as well. I think is in that as some form of supernormal stimulus. There's something happening there. There's some kind of abstraction, concentration, refinement, and exaggeration of things that we're normally reacting to, but that are happening on screens or in interaction. So social media, I think the fact that we get likes, or the fact that we get sent messages, or that we're constantly in contact with people, even though we're not close, like a condensation or exaggeration of certain sort of social norms. And this is like these abstracted forms of pleasure that we get from these supernormal stimulus. They're like a shortcut. They're a shortcut to the pleasures that we would normally have to work very hard for, or that would be in the context of something else. So, for millions and millions of years, as animals, we've had to like struggle and struggle and struggle to find food. And if we come across a pineapple, like that dose of sugar is absolutely amazing. And of course, you're going to eat it all because you need all of that energy. But it's, if you can buy, fake pineapple sweets, and they're really cheap and they're delicious, and you just have our brains think that we need them because we haven't developed fast enough to do it. So there's this kind of evolutional mismatch that's happening. So with animals, it's like, whether it's the scientist messing with them, or whether it's like, the orchid that develops to look like the wasp in order to trick someone else and become a super version of that wasp. There's a kind of obvious benefactor of that deception. And I think that it's more complex when it comes to human beings, because we're creating those supernormal stimulus ourselves, and the negative effects are happening to us. So there's a form of kind of self-flagellation or self-deception which is going on there. So I'll come back to that later, but that's one of the sort of questions I have in my head of like, if there is a trick happening there, who is being tricked, and what is that trick? And I'm also interested that I don't want to be like, oh, these are really bad things, they're addictive. It's like there's something about supernormal stimulus, or highly sensory, overstimulating things that we want to engage with, which brings us joy. Like there is something joyful about engaging in these things, otherwise we wouldn't do them. So it's like, I want to, and they help us to escape from negative or difficult emotions or situations, to be able to, go and eat junk food at the end of a hard day. It's like we do these things because we kind of need them as well. So I don't want to be kind of judgmental about it. I want to sit with this duality, or of this kind of contradiction of like these things that are kind of, they can be the cure of our, existential dread. But they can also exaggerate it as well, because we then become addicted and we become alienated or disassociated from normal pleasures. So yeah, they hit our reward pathways in our brains, and I think that this is partly, I see a lot of inertia amongst my students. I experience a lot of inertia myself, and I think that there is this constant interplay between the pleasure of escapism and the addictive, compulsive elements of these consistent kind of everywhere you look, the food we eat, the media we interact with, the way that our lives are structured at the moment is a constant stream of supernormal, overly saturated, overly stimulating experiences. And I think that can lead to nihilism and inertia. So I'm kind of interested in that. So my plan while I was here was to take these ideas and kind of use the desert and the extreme supernormal on some levels environment of the desert as this prism to kind of look at those ideas. I didn't know it was going to be kind of a super bloom, and so it's already like a supernormal version of the desert at the moment, which is like it's kind of not the normal aspects of the desert either. It's kind of something else. It's like this, magical moment that I'm here. And I had a plan that, as part of the impetus for this was like my observation that, the particular type of supernormal stimulus that I think is particularly interesting or dangerous at the moment is screens and phones and the internet. And later on I moved to AI, but that wasn't the original thing that I noticed. And so I planned to completely cut myself off, or partially try and cut myself off from the internet or using my phone. That didn't happen. I couldn't, it was very difficult for me, and so I think that sort of letting go of that was an interesting process, and also this idea of sitting with the duality of it being both a kind of a joyous escape and also a negative thing was actually being in quite an isolating new environment was quite difficult at times. So having the access to my friends and my community who were in a different time zone, a different place through my phone was actually really important. So yeah, that kind of faded away, that idea that I had to separate from my phone in order to get into the state to think about this thing. I also came across a huge amount of technical failings. So when I first arrived, my hard disk with all of my previous work on has died. I've lost, or I don't know if it's saved anywhere else, but it's completely gone. My phone smashed, so it sometimes works, but sometimes it presses its own buttons. Has other stuff going on. And then when I just managed to sort of start getting onto a role of work, my computer, where I was going to do all my editing, completely died as well. So I had all of these very strange. I'm talking about, I'm being a bit sort of, what's the word? Punished by technology because I've been daring to critique it. I don't know, it's something is going on there, but that's been an interesting part of the process as well. I also have been reading and listening a lot about AI, and there's a lot developing at the moment. None of it's really talking about image generation. It's talking about generative AI, but it's still the image generation is, I haven't heard so much being talked about, but I've been thinking about that a lot, and I've been using AI to make images while I'm here. So yeah, I suppose started to be able to sort of let go of some of the plans that I had for what I wanted to do while I was here, and allow myself to respond to what the desert was giving me and what I was, how that was sort of landing with the ideas that I already had. And again, allowing this, what I find most interesting about my own art practice and when I see other people's art practice is not things that spells out an idea or something which illustrates something. It's about something that gives you a felt sense of something that you feel in your body, or something that you can't necessarily put words to, but it kind of makes sense in a certain way. And I think that in order for those sorts of artwork to be made, you have to let go of trying to make something which is about something, or which is, and that was pretty difficult for me. I felt like I was trying to say something, and then I got a 3D camera arrive, and that really helped me because it was something I'd never used before, and I just felt free to just go off and I wasn't doing photography, I was just seeing how the technology worked, and then I came back and edited together and put no thought into it whatsoever, and that's when the sort of three-dimensional movie came about, and I quite liked that. There was no thought put into it to start with, and actually when I did try and think about it afterwards when it worked, and I did try and be more prescriptive about how I was editing the footage, it didn't work very well, so I had to kind of step back again and allow my ideas to kind of pause for a minute and just kind of mess around and experiment. And I just enjoy art which does that more, so I'm really glad that I managed to find a way of doing it. It's quite difficult with photography because you always have to go and be in a particular situation and choose when to take a photograph, so chance is quite a difficult thing I find to include into photography. And so this idea is wanting to create something which is about how you feel it, and the meaning that comes from it comes from the bodily experience that you have, or the physiological experience. That experience that I kind of, the parameters or the structure that I want to put around that experience is that I wanted it to be something that was captivating, mesmerizing, and soothing on one side, but at the same time, in sort of equal measure, be a bit repulsive, uncomfortable, and so that's why the different dimensions of the 3D, the over-exaggeration of color, the movement that never really stops. I wanted to feel like it's drawing you in because it's kind of beautiful, but also it's a little bit nauseating and a little bit too much. So if you, it's about 18 minutes long, the loop, but I think watching it for like 2 or 3 minutes is enough to get the sense of what I was trying to do. I really liked how, the addition of the 3D, as well as giving it the depth and giving it that strange color, is you have to wear glasses to put it on. And so you're kind of being reminded of the trick that the 3D is. Okay? And so if we're thinking about supernormal stimulus as being this thing that there's always like, it's over exaggerated and it's appealing, but it's more than that because there's also an element of it being a trick or being a deception. And I think that all media, photography, moving image, is all a trick, right? There's no such thing as a camera that records color. The cameras just record red, green, and blue, and then they merge those together, and then that trick makes us believe that we're seeing all those different colors. But there's nothing that records color, they just record different parts of the spectrum. It's the same with video and film. There's nothing that records motion or movement. There's only something that records instances of movement in still images, and then when we're showing them in the loop. So there's this kind of idea that, they are supernormal stimulus, and there is this trick which is happening that we're believing a story that's being told to us because we want to believe it. We want to see what we see. Okay, so our brains put together these separate parts into something which becomes a moving image or a color image or a 3-dimensional, and it's not really there. And I really liked as well that the old-fashioned 3D glasses, they work by separating the two different overlaid images into either red or cyan, and cyan is green and blue put together. So it's really about this idea of concentrating, abstracting, and refining an experience into these constituent parts. So these basic building blocks of vision, which is red, green, and blue. Yeah, and the fact that it was a super bloom when I was here and we were talking about like all these flowers, and it just kind of felt like there was something interesting about this specific way that the desert looks at the moment and the ideas that I was having. And also, again, by mistake, my shadow was caught in some of the first videos, and I really like this kind of sense of searching for something in this like shadow which is in the thing. And then by chance, when I was experimenting with the installation, I tried with the TV and the projector at the same time, and then as you're watching it, your shadow becomes enmeshed with the shadow on the inside, except for the TV. There's all this idea about inside and outside, and reality and fantasy that I was interested in as well. I think the shadow helps to ground you in that space, but also sort of implicate you into it as well, so it's it's your thing as well. The party elements, the party hats and the balloons. I was thinking about this idea of rewards, treating yourself like the idea that supernormal stimulus is kind of acceptable, or they're part of this idea that we have. There are certain times where it's acceptable to do these things, or to have excess, or to engage in these things, but that actually what happens is when it's available all the time, it becomes addictive and it becomes compulsive. And so the overlayering of the hats is kind of this, and the smashing of the balloons is like this kind of self-flagellation, the way that we beat ourselves up for engaging in these things that are highly addictive. They're designed, we do them because our bodies think that we need them, but we don't need them, and so then we beat ourselves up about them afterwards. And I really liked as well how the party hats start to look like this kind of protective device. Look like, if everyone's seen these people who are convinced that electromagnetic waves are poisoning them, and they make these like hats out of tinfoil, and I felt like there was something about the hat that felt like it was both an excess of pleasure or an excess of rewards, but it was also this kind of protective helmet that was protecting from the internet in some way. And so that kind of then led into some of the prompts for the AI stuff, like this idea of like asking AI to create an image of a device that you wear that protects you from the internet. and I'm trying to remember the prompt, protects you from the internet and makes the future more human. And so it's come up with these ideas which I think are kind of fascinating. And also the slow motion aspects of those things is, again, it's another form of a trick. It's a thing that, like, changing how time is represented in a moving image is another way of, like, constantly in my work I want to reinforce the fact that you're being tricked, but you still fall for it, right? It's like, I'm telling you that this is a trick that's not real, that's not, but it's still captivating, hopefully, enough that you get drawn into it. The GIFs, the AI images that repeat over and over again, I was really interested in how this kind of, the never-ending GIF is kind of a perfect example of inertia. And it's also this kind of, these throwaway images that, get sent around, and they kind of exist somewhere, constantly going round and round and round. And it's just this idea of, like, exploring that, exploring the sense that I feel that, I have, but the generation that I teach, I feel I have even more, where they can't do anything and they're unmotivated and they're kind of stuck in this position because they're surrounded, by all of this excessive experience. And then the AI prints are just basically me playing around. It's kind of, I think it's hard to think about and to explore ideas about AI without actually using it to make stuff. So it's kind of like, throughout the process I've been, like, reflecting on my ideas by generating new images and sort of recycling that. Out of all of the supernormal things that I engage in, making AI images is by far the most addictive. I mean, yesterday I didn't eat or do anything for about 8 hours because I started doing it and then I just can't stop because it's like consistent, like you're just generating these highly stimulating images from your imagination, and you can just press a button and then, within a minute there's another 25 images that have popped up. It's like insane. Yes, and I'm interested in this idea of creating images that can be completely unbound by physical, social, or practical reality. Like, there's things that are happening in those images that would never be able to be photographed, that go beyond, but they have the felt quality of a photograph. So it's this kind of ability to do that. And then I'll try and be quick, so I don't have to talk for ages. But I had 3 thoughts after I kind of thought about this when I went for lunch today. One is that I've spent a lot of time in America, back and forth over the years, and I think actually my experience of America is about this sort of synthetic, unreal, supernormal experience, and that's partly due to the culture. Like, there's lots of, you all know, parts of American culture which feel synthetic and unreal. But it's also the landscape. Like, in general, the landscape compared to England, everything is on a smaller scale in England. Everything is manageable. Nothing's going to hurt you. Everything is calm. And you come here and everything is 10 times as big. And it's then you come to the desert and it's it just looks like a theme park set. And it's just so it's the culture is unreal, but then there is parts of the environment which also, from my limited or specific perspective, feel like it's kind of supernormal. So yeah. And I think it's kind of, I did a previous residency at the Tom of Finland Foundation, and Tom of Finland is all about this kind of supernormal idea of what the human body or what masculinity is. And I think that America is kind of a supernormal version of what the world can be. And then I was coming back to this idea, this problem that I had of what is the, who benefits from the trick of supernormal stimulus that humans engage in? Where, what is the trick? What is it doing? Because we already have a problem, we already have an addiction, we already have a lack of control around our behavior with supernormal stimulus, and we're creating them ourselves. But actually what I'm doing when I'm making AI images is creating supernormal stimulus. So if there becomes a point where most of our media and most of our art, most of the images we consume are going to be created by AI, and it's not going to be far away, it's 5-10 years away. Why would somebody spend money on filming an advert when they can type in a few words and it will come out exactly as they're expecting. And so I think that, there's, AI could become the orchid to our wasp, if that makes sense. It could be the thing that's, benefiting from our being tricked into believing that this thing is actually doing something for us. Makes sense? Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of worry about if all images are being created by AI, then everyone's going to lose their job. I think that's terrible. Yeah. But I think it's going to, more significantly that, it's going to change how our brains and our eyes work. And it might not necessarily be a bad thing, but it's definitely going to change how our perception works. I think as humans, our perception changed radically when photography arrived. And the way we think, the way we dream, the way we are able to create images in our mind is different because photography exists, because we are able to see a version of the world outside. We are now able to create a version of the world which is truly lifelike and has no reference to anything else. And I think that we don't know what that's going to do, but it's going to do something. And I think that's, in my mind, kind of even more potentially worrying than lots of people losing their jobs, because it's a fundamental change. And on top of that, it's inherently biased. It's based on all of the images that have been created so far. So it's completely racist. It's completely sexist. Unless I specifically say a black person or an Asian person, it's going to make a white person. If I say a nurse, it's going to show a woman. If I say a doctor, it's going to show a man. It's going off what we have, And so it's we're at this tipping point where we're about to enter a world where almost all of our images are created by a system that looks at all our existing images. And we're not ready for it because our existing images are racist and sexist and awful. They're not representative of we want to be or what we were. I mean, they are in certain ways, but there's a danger that that's my worry. Those are my worries. And that's it.
So, for anybody who hasn't been in yet, the video that Jacob was referring to is the inside with 3D glasses. The AI images are out here on the table. Are there any questions?
Well, I got so many questions. I don't know where to begin. That's such a great talk. You have such a free thinking mind. Just great work, great talk, great work. So, and the other thing is a commentary from senior citizens. I'm sorry. I mean, it's not schadenfreude or anything, but it's so, whatever you call it, to say, we're glad we're not the only ones with trouble with the technology. So thank you. So just in general, how did you get interested in the idea of superstimulation? I mean, I remember that in biology about the super egg, and they could get this poor bird to sit on an even bigger one. But how did you focus on that in your art, and what were you hoping to understand about the human psyche or whatever by exploring this? It's such an interesting idea what you're doing.
It stems from my last two projects, major projects. 2 projects ago, I was really interested in algorithms, specifically on YouTube, and about how there was a rumor then that there were certain kids' videos that were being made by an AI or a mixture of an AI and content farms.
Yeah.
They were really wrong, because they were just basically, they would take the top 10 most searched videos and then it would compile them with 3D clips and make a kind of composite thing. So it's kind of like pre-AI systems, but it was being done by, so if there was a trend for certain pop stars to drink urine, and that was like one of the most searched things, and then Peppa Pig and Spider-Man and Elsa from Frozen. So there were all these weird 3D animations that were of like people drinking urine and Elsa from Frozen and like people beating each other up because it was like that would make sense if you're an AI because you have no idea of the context of what's going on there. Right? So there were these AI systems and it was like, you don't... Yeah, and it's also because I would get stuck in black holes on YouTube where I'd end up watching I found some cake making videos where people decorating cakes. They're 10 hours long, and I can watch them for maybe not 10 hours, but I can watch them for an hour. Or like cars running over food, like tires running, there's like a whole subgenre of that where there are also 10-hour long videos of cars running over stuff. And they're like these videos, they're not about a story or a logical reason to be watching it. We're engaging them because there's colours, there's movement. So it's kind of like, before I knew it, but they're a supernormal stimulus in there. There's things that our body are responding to.
Yeah.
It's a sensory response. And human beings couldn't curate videos for people that would be as addictive as what a algorithm. It wasn't AI then, it was an algorithm. The algorithms would see how long are you watching it for. If it's on your phone, it's measuring your eye contact as well. So how long are you looking at that screen in that amount of time? And so, we would never have known that people really love to watch things getting run over. But someone once made that video, and then it became addictive, and people watched it. It's like ASMR, which is, why would anyone know that somebody whispering and talking about cleaning your ears is going to be completely addictive? But it became completely addictive, and because the thing that was recording, that was watching what when, wasn't a person, it was a robot. It didn't care that it was weird, it just did it. And so then it gets human beings involved because you make more money if you make things that more people will watch. Yeah. So people don't even know what they're doing. They're setting up content farms where they're creating videos where they're poking slime with their fingers with long nails for 2 hours. And they're just doing it because the algorithm has told them that's what's going to bring them more money. So that makes sense? So that's kind of I wasn't aware of the idea of stimulus spend, but it's that kind of is what's happening. And we don't need, I think that when we sit and, watch something on TV, we can say it's all because I really like that story or I think the show is funny or whatever, but we just need to switch off and we need something that's going on. So we've always had an excuse, we've always had a story we tell ourselves of well, this is what I'm doing, why I'm engaging in this activity. And I think it's weird now we're in a position where people will just watch YouTube, where they're just watching paint dry or whatever it is, whatever thing that gets you stuck in that loop and you realise, oh, I've been here for 2 hours and I'm watching another video of someone doing a marble run or people going down a water slide or whatever it is. It's so we don't. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I mean, what does that say about us as a society that we're interested in sticking our fingers in slime? I mean, how do you interpret that? It's crazy.
But I think if we learned that about ourselves, we wouldn't know that if there wasn't an algorithm that was able to say, oh, this is actually what you like.
Yeah, exactly.
So it knows about our pleasure more than we do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Future.
Is it what?
Isn't it scary that something knows us more than we know ourselves?
I mean, that's the thing. It's it could be an amazing revelation for us.
I did read about or hear about this conversation, the chat AI, and if they didn't control it, it would lead the conversation into something very, very dark. And so.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure loads of people do. We always think we're at the precipice of something really important. But it does feel like with AI, it could go really, really bad very quickly, or it could be the opportunity for something amazing to happen because, as a community of human beings on the planet, we don't make very good decisions collectively, right? So if something else takes over, it might be that, actually an AI makes much better decisions than we do because we haven't done a very good job, right? So it could be, I don't think that, it's not going to be hard for AI to do a better job than us, right? But it's not necessarily going to do a better job. But we don't do very well by ourselves.
I have a question. Go ahead. What would have happened, like you explained in the beginning, you somehow your technology started to break, turn off, certain things happen. I'm just curious what would happen if that would have continued. There would be a power outage. Without technology, without electricity. I'm just saying this because of also your teaching, and I've recently started. This is not about me, but it's more about teaching and art. And I've started teaching elementary school kids, and they have this inner or this natural creativity, which you mentioned. What happens when you started to walk through the desert and with the 3D camera, and you didn't think about what it would mean. You started to work from your, your natural impulses. I'm just curious if all your technology would have broken down during this residency. What would you have made, or what would you have done? I mean, this maybe is a longer question.
It's a good question, because I think that, it's difficult because the work I want to make is about how technology affects us. I feel like
exactly.
It has to include that. So it might be interesting to make it without any of that stuff. But I think that the romantic idea I had about coming to the desert and feeling isolated was that I was going to completely cut myself off everything, and I was going to learn to become a painter, or I was going to I think that within 3 weeks that wasn't like, because I find it difficult because it's great to have a studio, but I don't really have a studio practice. When you put that got to material, it's like I want to have something that didn't solve any technology, but
So that's because your addiction to it, and it's also because of your work. I mean, this is like tied into your work for a long time, of course.
Yeah,
and I think it's very interesting.
I think if I wasn't like so actively interested in things, like these ideas are like in my brain. I'm teaching photography all the time. I'm talking to students. I'm aware of these things. If I could have made work, if I could just come here and just make work based on anything, just based on my experience here, then it would have been great to like digital technology and see if I did painting or dance or something else. You know what I mean? But I feel like my subject matter was so much around technology that I kind of had to use it even if it was failing me.
Yeah. No, and it is what makes. I haven't seen the installation yet, so I'm very curious, and I think especially these, artificiality of it all, and it's very interesting. And it gets to a dangerous territory or not. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks a lot. Any other questions or discussion? Jacob's here.
Somebody had a question over there. She had a question.
So I was wondering, what did you use to do the AI photos, and do you feed it photos and then it supplements them, or it pulls that all from the internet?
I use Midjourney, and I just started experimenting with adding my own images or recycling images through, but usually I just do it from prompts. So it's usually just text-based.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jack.